Good evening, everybody. It's December 5th. We're 5 days into the month, 5 days closer to Christmas, and we're going to change things up again. We had some bourbons, a lot, 3 bourbons. We had 1 rye, and now we're going in a different direction. We are now going to have our very first Scotch of the month. We're going to try some Monkey Shoulder. I chose Monkey Shoulder for the Advent calendar and for the first Scotch that we're going to have for a few reasons. The first is that it's very affordable. You can get this between like 30 and 35 bucks in most places, which is great. So what we have here with Monkey Shoulder is a blended malt Scotch whiskey, which means this is not a blend of a bunch of different whiskeys from different grains and a blended malt as opposed to a single malt. So if you ever see a Scotch that says single malt, that means that the mash bill for that Scotch was 100% malted barley. Everything used to distill that spirit that was turned into Scotch is barley that was malted and then turned into the spirit. This is a blend of a bunch of different single malts. The only grain in this Scotch is barley, is malted barley. What Monkey Shoulder is referring to, you had a guy or guys in this room where the barley was being malted or out to dry, where they would have these big, almost like snow shovels, and they'd be tossing it around to kind of even things out. And these guys, they would end up developing this injury to their shoulder from doing that so much that people call Monkey Shoulder. It's referring to that injury, that these people who toss the malt on the malt floors in the days of yore, making Scotch in Scotland, the injuries that they would suffer. And it's a cutesy name. It got these little monkeys here, but I kind of like that it ties into almost like a footnote to the history of Scotch. But let's open this sucker up and see how it tastes. So we got the Monkey Shoulder poured, letting it set for a bit. I find that Scotch is usually less, I can't think of a better way to describe it than less potent than a bourbon or rye. But there's reason for that, having to do with the type of wood that you're permitted to age Scotch in versus some of these American whiskeys, and then the effect that has on the spirit itself. But in general, in my opinion, Scotch is a little bit softer and more nuanced than, not all, but a lot of the bourbons and ryes. So that's sweetness right up front, but not the same sort of sweetness as like the bourbon or the ryes. And no spiciness whatsoever. Sweet, maybe like a hint of sourness to it, not in an off-putting way at all, maybe not even there. Maybe a tad bit of like brininess, like a little bit of like salty air in there. All right, let's see how it tastes. Having tasted American whiskeys, bourbons and ryes over the past few days, the first thing I notice when I'm drinking this, and I don't always get this off of Monkey Shoulder, I'm picking up a lot more right now, at least, of that brininess, like a little bit of like a salty air, like maybe even not a seaweed quality, but like something leaning in that direction, and I don't know that that's something I've ever picked up off of Monkey Shoulder before. So maybe you'll get something similar, maybe you won't. Maybe this batch is like a little bit different. I like it quite a bit. Maybe a little bit of, a tiny little bit of like ex-bourbon notes, because I'm sure this was aged in ex-bourbon casks. It's 43% ABV, and you'll find that a lot of Scotches do come in less than a lot of bourbons and ryes. So you'll find a lot of Scotches are going to come in between the 40 and like 48% range, and 43 is good. It's good for an easy sipper. It's sweet, yet briny, and I didn't expect that at all with this Scotch. This is more complex than I remember for sure, although still not terribly complex. Easy sipper, great pour. I really enjoy this. I think this is one of the best values in Scotch you can get these days.